Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. And for LSU fans, it is a happy Friday. A big sigh of relief. Our man Glen West over there in Omaha. He joins me here on the day's podcast. Glen, deep breath. Wow. You get to collect a little bit before you head off to media coverage and press conferences here this morning, this around noon. But what a week in Omaha. First off, Glenn, I want to say this. Happy belated birthday. And I want to give you a chance to go into this before we get into the nitty-gritty of these games. Look, I know you cover LSU, obviously, but I know you grew up in the state of Louisiana. I know that you went to LSU. What were the emotions like a little bit watching this game? Did the young Glen West, was he just like kicking and screaming when Tommy White hits this home run that sends LSU to the finals?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of a catch-22 because, as a media guy, you kind of get the, I guess, the fandom, quote unquote, kind of beat out of you kind of just throughout your career and getting to follow all these teams, knowing that you can't get too high or too low. But last night was just all that was out the window. It was really hard to keep your emotions in check. And that was the case for a lot of people in that press box and certainly for a lot of the people that were there getting to watch that. I mean, that was in terms of sporting events, that's going to be right up there with ones that I'll remember for a long time. I can't imagine that there's a whole lot of LSU baseball games that fans have watched over the years that just in terms of execution, in terms of just the drama of it all, the excitement of the final hit there from Tommy White. I mean, just everything. It was just really an emotional kind of roller coaster. You get just amazing performances from Paul Skeens, from Rhett Lauder, from Thatcher Hurd. A lot of the bullpen from Wake Forest stepped up and did its job. And as the game kind of went along, you just felt like this was heading for extras. And you just kind of got that feeling that the first team to make a mistake was going to be the one that just didn't get a chance to move on. And it was difficult. I mean, you could see it in even after the game, Tommy White, one of the first things that he did after celebrating with his team was walk over to the Wake Forest pitcher and give him a hug. And I know they had some history and that they kind of knew each other growing up, but that's the kind of game where nobody, like, the loser isn't a loser kind of thing. Like there's really nothing more to say about that part, just because it was such a well executed, clean game, and just really a phenomenal day, I think, for college baseball. So, but with that being said, LSU did a lot of really good things in this game. They've done a lot of really good things the last week to kind of put themselves in this position. You've now you burned Paul Skeens in all likelihood. I would be very surprised if he's able to pitch during this Florida series. So you're kind of hit with a blast from the past here of just 6 years ago this was the same matchup, LSU Florida, and LSU kind of was in a position where they couldn't use Alex Lang until the final game of that series. They're going to have to continue to hope that this pitching staff steps up. They've been absolutely phenomenal throughout the entire postseason run, but particularly here in Omaha. Was reading his stats and just kind of going through some research and everything. LSU's pitching staff has thrown 46 innings in Omaha. They haven't allowed a run in 42 of them. And wow. They have I believe it's right under a 1.70 ERA when you factor in the Wake Forest game from Thursday night. These guys are pitching at a very, very high level. The offense, it's taken a little bit of time, especially last night when you're facing such elite pitching. But just to be able to get those hits and to be able to get those runs when you need them there in the end was all really, really important. And LSU's now moving on here with 2 wins away from winning its first College World Series in like 15 years. It's been a while.
Yeah, and it's absolutely crazy and a little bit poetic that the big guys were able to get the job done. Look, you mentioned it earlier. If you were able to take a step back, and I know it's so hard for the people who listen to this podcast and watch it, maybe years down the road, the two guys that we saw pitch last night are going to be major league pitchers. I mean, these guys were phenomenal. Obviously, we know what Skeens was, but Louder's work, albeit a different velocity, but man, just hitting corners, being able to move east to west, north to south, wherever he wanted to go, and fooling LSU's hitters. It was a great job. But you mentioned the shutout. I think it's up to like almost 19 consecutive shutout innings that this
Yeah.
LSU staff has pitched. Glenn, talk about the job done. I mean, I've got it right here. We saw Skeens go 8 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 9 Ks. But then, I mean, look, you kind of grow to expect that out of Paul Skeens. But then Thatcher Hurd came down there, just 1 hit, 1 walk allowed, and 3 crucial shutout innings, especially that carried LSU to the win. Talk about the pitching performance kind of then. And then, I mean, obviously we have to mention Riley Cooper and the job that he did. It's kind of crazy. But look, you need performances like this if you're going to win a championship. Every single championship team has those kind of guys that just kind of not come out of nowhere, but really step up on the big stage.
Yeah, and look, you needed it to happen because of the situation that LSU was in. You know, they win the first game against Tennessee. You're feeling good about yourself in the winners bracket, and then you drop that second game to Wake Forest, and all of a sudden you have a real uphill climb to make. And so to win 3 games in 3 days, what you really need to do is have elite pitching performances. And starting with Nate Ackenhausen in that first game. Nate Ackenhausen. He just came in and did a tremendous job. I mean, there was just real honest surprise, I think, throughout that outing that he was doing what he did to get into the 7th inning as a relief pitcher. He hadn't gone that deep in a game all season long. And then the next game, you get a scoreless inning out of Javen Coleman. You get 4 1/3 out of Griffin Herring, and certainly Riley Cooper kind of shuts down that game as well. Cooper pitches in 3 of the first 4 games for you and just does a lights out job. You can see why Jay Johnson's trust in him never wavered. Even with some of the struggles this year from the bullpen, LSU, really routinely turned to Riley Cooper in big spots, and because I think that Jay Johnson knew that if LSU was to get to this point, they were going to need him to respond in a big way. And boy, has he. I mean, I think, maybe outside of, Trey Morgan and a couple of the performances, obviously, from Paul Skeens, I don't know that you've had a more reliable player for LSU during this postseason run than Riley Cooper. I mean, he's just been tremendous. And then obviously last night, what you get from Skeens and certainly from Thatcher Hurd to go the final 3 innings there and to shut that game down. Just a really like we just talked about, just a stellar pitching performance here in Omaha. Those guys are striking guys out. They're throwing strikes. I think that's the biggest thing that you've noticed here. Even, we've talked about the ballpark a little bit and how it's not exactly hitter friendly, and that's certainly been the case. But you still have to throw the ball over the plate. And I think the reason that you've seen LSU have so much success on the mound is that they've thrown strikes. They've limited free passes. Alex Milazzo has done a great job of setting up pitches behind the plate. I think that's a big reason why you're seeing him out here in these really crucial, critical games, just because of the strike zones and how tight they are and how you need your best defensive catcher back there to really set those pitches up and give those pitchers confidence. And so it's just been a complete group effort. But I would argue that the pitching staff in a lot of ways has carried LSU through this College World Series run, and that's something that I definitely wouldn't have said 5 or 6 weeks ago. And it's just a testament to those guys and how quickly they've turned things around.
Yeah, how many times do we say, Glenn, whether it's on the podcast or just talking in a conversation, if LSU's going to win, they're going to have to hit their way there. And, man, they just have proved us exactly wrong. But that's the beauty of this sport and the beauty of baseball. 5 total hits, and 4 of those 5 hits, Glenn, come out of the top 2 guys in last night's win. Dylan Cruz with 2, the all-important laser, the single that nearly turned into a double that obviously got him on, and then Tommy White with just a no-doubt shot. And you talked about it. I mean, look, that ballpark is cavernous. I mean, it is huge, and I don't know if you've had a chance to kind of walk around and see the facility or anything like that. I mean, is it a surprise that some of these baseballs are not getting out? I know Cruz has had a couple that you felt like could get out. He did have the one that he sent opposite field. But for Tommy White to hit his as no doubt as he did, I mean, that just shows you, obviously, fans know how strong he is and how much exit velo he put on that baseball.
He's got elite power. I think we all know that. Dylan Cruz has got great power. They have a lot of hitters in this lineup with great power, but you're not getting anything over the fence unless it's a pull shot to the left or right side. You're anything hit, dead center, left center, right center. Um, that all has been kind of wrangled in by the wind, by the conditions. You're not getting that over if you're hitting it into left center or right center and just deep center. And look, yeah, Belosso's 3-run homer against Wake Forest on. I'm trying to put my days together here. Wednesday, I think that was right. Um, he that was a pull shot that just barely
Yeah.
got over the fence, and that thing was nuked. And then Tommy's last night just barely got over the
Jeez.
fence, and that one was really hit very, very well. I mean, I don't know exactly what the exit velo was on that home run hit from White last night, but I would imagine it's over 110, 112. I mean, it's amazing how, and look, for LSU's offense, like that was a huge part of how they got here in the first place. I mean, I,
True.
I think I did the math on it. They had something like 19 home runs in the regional and super regional rounds. And that accounted for a good portion of their runs that they scored in those two postseason rounds. And so when you get here and you kind of see here the first couple games that it's going to be one of those deals where you're not going to be hitting a whole ton of home runs. I think you can see why the offense has kind of had a little bit of a up and down time here. But they've come through when it's needed most. They've done a good job of getting those clutch hits at different times of the game. And to the pitching staff's credit, man, they've been able to really hold down opposing offenses, and certainly I think a lot of that has to do with the field, but even more so just these guys being able to throw strikes and get guys out and force those pop flies, those soft grounders. All these guys that have pitched in Omaha have done a really, really nice job, and offenses come through when you've needed them.
Yeah, and you had to have historic performances like we talked about, and LSU has done just that. Man, it looked bleak, but the willpower and something we're going to talk about here. The ready to be, I mean, the battle tested readiness. I guess that's a word. We're just going to say it is. But
Yeah.
the ability to be battle tested, it sets them up for a Florida series that Glenn. I mean, look. Obviously, the broadcast continue to say it, and I'm not going to say I disagree with it. Like, Florida loved what happened last night because no matter who they got, they probably weren't going to have to face an ace. And so, obviously, they loved it. But there's an element to me when you look at this LSU team of, look, when you're playing with house money and you're just playing hot, look, we talked about Oral Roberts coming into the tournament. I mean, LSU is kind of that situation where it's like, where's the divide between, hey, we just want to keep playing because we're playing so well? I mean, is this off day the worst thing that could happen to LSU? It kind of cools them off a little bit. How do they
Oh,
manage this?
I think that they're going to be embracing this off day with everything they got. I mean, look, you just played 3 high intensity, high stakes, high emotions games in a row. And that's got to take a toll on you,
Yeah.
especially if you were some of those guys playing in the field all 3 games. I mean, look, I forgot to mention him earlier, but I would argue that Trey Morgan's probably had the best College World
Oh,
Series
wow.
of any player that's here. Like, I mean, he's just been so good. I think he's been the catalyst for LSU this entire last week or so. Not only at the plate, where I think he's batting well over 330 with a couple RBIs and a home run mixed in there as well, a couple of walks. But what he's done defensively in terms of making all the plays at first, that bunt, I mean, that bunt play from last night is going to be something that, like, that will be played on highlight reels at LSU and Alex Box
Yeah.
Stadium for a very long time. It saved their season. I mean, like if he doesn't make that play right there,
Mm-hmm.
LSU, I mean, they don't go on to score in the 9th inning. So I mean, that's that would have been the game. So that play, and I think that his kind of play throughout the postseason run has been, I think, just kind of the mindset that I think all these guys have had. They don't consider it as they're playing with house money. They think they deserve to be here, and that
Yeah.
they have earned the right to win these games and through their play. And so I think that look, it was important for LSU to kind of now have this day, I think, to kind of settle down, especially after last night. I mean, just being on the field, the emotions and the just the jubilation and all the stuff that came with a game that ended like that. you've got to kind of reset a little bit. I mean, I think it's got to be important for LSU to kind of get their minds right. You know, they talked about, a lot of the players talked about last night of enjoying this, and then once midnight hits, it's the switch starts to flip, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's been their mindset all season long, taking it one game at a time. Um, and here they are. I mean, it's pretty incredible that they've made it to this point, considering some of the injuries, considering some of the adversity, whether it's losing the game earlier this week and having to win three straight, having to now, looks like you're not going to have probably your ace pitcher here for this championship series. How they, who steps up, from that perspective, is going to be a really interesting kind of question here. And then, look, just I think the overall feeling here is that these guys deserve it and that they want to be here. They've earned the right to be in this position, and now they're 2 wins away from accomplishing their goal that they had all the way back in the fall.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the pitching and how it could match up because obviously you've mentioned, and let's just get this out of the way. Yes or no question. Is there any chance Monday in the eighth inning that we could see Paul Skeens? Like if it's a close game, I mean, what does that look like? Now we'll talk about Saturday, Sunday, but is there any chance Paul Skeens pitches? Not starts potentially, but
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, but in a relief role, maybe needing 6 outs to close it out.
If you get to a game three, and you get to the final eighth, ninth inning, um, I think there would be a serious conversation about that. I don't know that it happens. I think LSU has a couple of guys, Riley Cooper, that they could feel really, Gavin Guidry could feel really good about getting the final, 5, 6 outs of a game. Um, but if Paul Skeens feels like he's ready and he has those conversations with Jay Johnson, with Wes Johnson, with the training staff, I wouldn't be the one to want to stand in the way of that dude. But look, they're going to protect him. They've done it all
Yeah,
season long. They're not going to put him in any compromising positions. So I think if you get to a game three, if that's something that happens, and you're kind of in a position here late where you have a chance to win the game, I could certainly see it. But I'm not going to bet on it. I
yeah.
think that there's just a lot of other options out there for you, and LSU is going to be very, very careful with how they use him.
Yeah, I like what you said there. It's not like they're in a situation where they don't have a guy that can go shut the door. That's one thing that they found, especially over here the last couple days. You correct me if I'm wrong here. I mean, does it look like it's going to be Ty Floyd on Saturday and then maybe an Ackenhausen on Sunday? I mean, is that kind of guys at least will open the game up? And then kind of where do you think they go from there? Maybe not for Monday, but maybe what could we see after Ty Floyd? Is there a certain way they want to kind of match up this thing out against Florida?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're going to start with Ty Floyd, and then I think what you're probably looking at is a combination of Gavin Guidry, Riley Cooper. I think those are probably the three that you see in the first game, depending on how far Ty can go. I mean, Ty only was able to go, I think, 3 innings, 4 innings in the first
Four
game.
innings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
four. Um, and they had to turn the ball over to all those guys in the bullpen afterwards. But yeah, I would certainly assume that it's going to be some combination of those three at least to start. See kind of where you're at the end of that game. And then it's going to be another one of those games where there's a tough decision because Ackenhausen just threw 6, 7 innings in that game
Mm-hmm.
a couple nights ago on Tuesday. Um, he threw his longest outing of his career. I mean, like, do you really want to, all of a sudden now Tuesday to Sunday, um, bring him back out and ask for another similar kind of performance? That's kind of a short turnaround as well. So
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some interesting discussions there about that Sunday game. I think maybe whoever you don't get to on Saturday, you just kind of piece it together, with whether it's with Coleman and Ackenhausen and some of these other guys. Blake Money might get an inning or two here and there. Certainly, Griffin Herring makes a lot of sense. He threw 4 1/3, but I think you could certainly bring him back on Sunday for a couple innings. So there are going to be some options, but
Mm-hmm.
this is going to come down to, in my opinion, just LSU's. This is going to have to be a two or 3 game series where LSU's offense is really going to have to step up. I mean, I really
Yeah.
truly believe that. I think the pitching staff has shown you that they can help weather the storm, and they can certainly clamp teams down. But you're going to be pitching on fumes here in these last couple games, and Florida's going to be pretty well rested. They're going to throw their top guys. LSU's offense is going to have to respond. They can't be putting up 2-3 runs. I think you're going to have a 5, 6, 7, 8 run kind of game to be able to walk out of this thing with the ring.
Glenn, as we wrap it up here, I kind of want to give you this the question. You could play devil's advocate with it. You can agree, but I want to know, where do you draw the line of the balance? There's one argument that obviously says, look, LSU's faced some really good pitching in Omaha, and when you get here, everyone can really pitch, and it's going to result in offenses not putting up the numbers maybe they do necessarily during the regular season. But there's also an element of what we talked about. This has been, by and far, it feels like the best offense in the country. So where do you put the balance of LSU offense hasn't lived up to where they need to, and they've just faced good pitching? I mean, where do you put the balance in that? And you mentioned it kind of, they're going to have to do something maybe they haven't shown us yet in Omaha, outside of maybe the Tennessee game where they were able to scratch across 5 runs.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I'll say, and I'll push back a little bit on something that I've said already in this podcast, but just they faced the 2 toughest pitching staffs in the country in all of their games. I mean, Tennessee and Wake Forest, they have some dudes. I mean, they have a bunch of guys that are going to be first, second round picks that are going to be playing Major League Baseball. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing that LSU's had an up and down performance in Omaha at all, because what they've done is win games at the most timely moments and come through with some big hits when the teams needed them most. And that's been a really good formula that's worked so far. But I think you're just going to need to step up a little bit more here against Florida. I mean, Florida is going to be, like I said, well rested. I think you got to be able to push the ball, to get guys on base, to run up pitch counts. Get into the bullpen a little bit and see if you can't have some more success through that avenue. Look, this is also a Florida staff. Halston Waldrop is a guy that LSU is very familiar with at Southern Miss. Shut him down twice last year in the regional in Southern Miss. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be not an easy kind of next couple days. I think it's going to be really about getting right mentally, getting a little bit more of rest on your body before you have to start back up here with another high intensity game. But look, I think LSU's offense and just the way that they have been able to come through at the right time has been the most impressive part about all this, because you're facing, like I said, I mean, Rhett Lauder is a really good pitcher. Drew Beam's a really good pitcher who's going to pitch in the major leagues for a long time. You got a chance at Andrew Lindsay in the first game. You were able to knock him out early against Tennessee, and all these guys. Michael Massey from last night. These are all guys that are going to be big time pitchers. And yes, LSU hasn't had the most consistent time, but they've come through when they've needed it most. And so I think if you kind of run with that and hope that continues, then you're going to be in a good spot here, going into the Florida series. And they're going to leave it all on the table. I was talking with Trey Morgan last night, talking with Cade Beloso last night. Their mentality hasn't changed at all. I mean, those guys are just absolutely locked in, laser focused on getting this thing done. This has been, one interesting story that I heard yesterday from Jay Johnson that he talked about with the media. When LSU lost the game on Tuesday, he went to the team, or no, when did they lose that first game to Wake Forest? Maybe it was Monday. I can't remember, but I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday. And so when they lost that game, he came into the dugout, came into the locker room or the meeting room where they have, and on the whiteboard there, he wrote down Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And those are all the games that LSU could potentially play or would need to play in order to win a College World Series. And so when they got to the Monday game, he put 1 game, 1 ring, national championship, LSU, something like that. And LSU, and he asked the players simply, do you guys know what we're going in for here? And they all said yes, and they walked out and they said, let's go to the field and let's go win a game. And so they've really kind of reinstilled that belief that they could do this. They've gotten 3 games done. They got 2 more to go. We'll see if they can pull it out, but certainly I think this is a team that's riding high with a lot of confidence, a lot of momentum. And if you can get a little bit more consistency from the offense and continue what you're doing at the mound, I think LSU is going to be in for some really, really good news.
Yeah, that's really cool, Glenn. The ability to compartmentalize each and every single day is something that championship teams have to do, and we're going to see if LSU can do it this weekend. Glenn, I know you're enjoying Omaha. Any great stories? I know you had a steak. I mean, any just off-topic stories that that folks may not know, or what's the coolest thing you've done yet, other than watch last night's game, obviously.
Yeah, had some good food. Honestly, I've been pretty much sticking with the hotel to the field kind of routine. But a couple days ago, I got a chance to sit down with a couple of the parents and spend some time out there with them tailgating and just for a story that we're working on over here. Still want to get some more parents involved, but just listening to what they've had to say about the 2023 season, the memories that they've had watching their kids play. Watching all the fans come out and show all the support for the team. That stuff is really, really interesting to kind of get a behind the scenes lens of just kind of what it's like to be a parent watching all this happen as well. And those are obviously very, those are people that are very tight knit with this group as well. So I would say that's probably been my favorite part so far. And then some food, some various food options too. We had some ice cream a couple days ago at a nice little local spot, and some good Italian food. And then obviously you have to go with the steak. I mean, there was a really good steak called the Drover. Great place called the Drover out here. That's kind of a rite of passage that you have to go to when you're in Omaha. So we did that a couple days ago as well. But yeah, it's been a blast, and they keep forcing me to extend my hotel stay, which is nice. I've been making really good friends with the front desk of the hotel and of the car rental service. So, but it's all worth it, and it's all been a ton of fun, and I can't wait for this final series.
Hey, you never know. Part of the lure, if LSU can pull this off, is going to be you in the minivan. I mean, maybe that just is what is needed. But hey, it's going to be a lot of fun. Great weekend. Obviously, a matchup that we didn't get to see during the regular season that I think everyone across the country is really excited to see. Florida against LSU, the rematch of back in 2017. Here's hoping the Tigers can change the tide. And man, any odds that are not in their favor, I think that this team's playing well, and anything can happen once they get to Saturday. Glenn, appreciate you as always. This has been the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon, Glen West, live from Omaha. He's going to have coverage all weekend long, and it's going to be a ton of fun. We can encourage you. The boards have been active. It's been a ton of fun to talk with fans throughout all of this. Agree or disagree, it's been a lot of fun talking with fans over on the boards, and man, can't wait for Saturday. And I'll tell you one thing. Glenn still have only been in Baton Rouge for 2 weeks, but it's been really cool from my vantage point. If I go out and need to run an errand, or last night I went out and picked up some dinner before the wife and I were watching the game, just the amount of purple and gold and everyone just so excited back home, the people that don't get to make the trip and being able to see what's exciting. It's really fun. It's unlike any other place. So I know that a lot of fans back here in Baton Rouge are really excited to see what's going on. But Glenn, appreciate you as always, man. We'll listen to, hopefully, a championship podcast next week. This has been another episode of the Go 24/7 podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe on YouTube, or if you're listening on audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. We'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.